Maya Washington had worked as a housekeeper for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like the mansion that stood before her. The iron gates alone probably cost more than her annual salary. She checked her phone for the third time, making sure she had the right address. The job agency had been very clear about the pay, triple her usual rate, but they had also been oddly vague about the details. "Just keep the house clean and mind your own business," her supervisor had said with a serious expression that made Maya's stomach flutter with unease. Now, standing at the service entrance of the sprawling estate in the hills above Lowe's Angels, she understood why the pay was so generous. This was not just any mansion. This was the home of Alexander, the tech billionaire whose face appeared on magazine covers and news programs almost daily. His company, Industries, had revolutionized artificial intelligence and made him one of the youngest billionaires in the world. Maya pressed the buzzer and waited. The October morning air was crisp, and she pulled her cardigan around her shoulders. She had dressed carefully for this first day, choosing her best black uniform and making sure her hair was pulled back neatly. At 42, she had learned that first impressions mattered, especially when working in houses like this. The door opened to reveal a stern-faced woman in an expensive gray suit. She was probably in her 50s, with silver hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "You must be Maya Washington," the woman said, her voice crisp and professional. "I am Mrs. the house manager. You will report directly to me." Maya nodded and stepped inside. The service entrance opened into a large, modern kitchen that was bigger than her entire apartment. Stainless steel appliances gleamed under bright lights, and the granite countertops were so clean they seemed to sparkle. "Mr. values his privacy above all else," Mrs. continued as she led Maya through the kitchen. "You will clean the designated areas only. You will not enter Mr.'s private office or his bedroom unless specifically instructed. You will not speak to Mr. unless he speaks to you first. And most importantly, you will not discuss anything you see or hear in this house with anyone outside these walls." The warning in Mrs.'s voice was clear. Maya had signed a non-disclosure agreement that came with serious legal consequences, but hearing it spoken aloud made it feel more real and more threatening. They walked through a series of hallways lined with expensive artwork. Maya recognized some of the paintings from museum visits with her daughter. She could not believe she was seeing original works worth millions of dollars hanging casually on someone's walls. "You will work Monday through Friday, 6 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon," Mrs. explained. "There is a staff bathroom here and a small break room where you may eat lunch. You are not to use any other facilities in the house." Maya nodded, taking mental notes. She had worked in wealthy homes before, but never anything quite like this. The level of security and secrecy felt more like working in a government building than a private residence. Mrs. showed her to a supply closet that was better organized than most stores. Every cleaning product was labeled and arranged by type. There were vacuums that probably cost more than Maya's car, and cleaning supplies she had only seen in professional catalogs. "Your primary responsibility will be the main living areas on the first floor, the guest bedrooms on the second floor, and the library," Mrs. said, handing Maya a detailed schedule. "Mr. typically leaves for his office at 7:30 in the morning and returns around 6 in the evening. You should have minimal contact with him." As they walked through the mansion, Maya tried to absorb everything. The place was like something from a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city below. The furniture looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Everything was perfect, almost too perfect, as if real people did not actually live here. The library took Maya's breath away. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, and a ladder on rails provided access to the higher shelves. Comfortable leather chairs sat near a massive fireplace, and soft lighting created a warm, welcoming atmosphere. "Mr. spends considerable time in here," Mrs. noted. "Be very careful with the books. Some are quite valuable and rare." Maya ran her fingers along the spine of a leather-bound volume, wondering what it would be like to have access to so many books. She had always loved reading, but her local library was small and outdated. They continued the tour, moving through a formal dining room that could seat 20 people, a living room with a grand piano, and several guest bedrooms that were each larger than Maya's entire apartment. Everything was decorated in neutral colors with expensive fabrics and furniture that looked like it had never been used. "The master suite is on the 3rd floor," Mrs. said as they reached a staircase with a velvet rope across it. You will never have reason to go up there unless specifically instructed by Mr. himself. Maya stared up the stairs, curious about what lay beyond. She had cleaned plenty of bedrooms in her career, but something about the forbidden nature of this one made it seem mysterious and intriguing. There are security cameras throughout the house, Mrs. added, as if reading Maya's thoughts. Mr. takes his safety very seriously. The system records everything, so please keep that in mind as you work. The reminder about surveillance made Maya suddenly self-conscious. She had nothing to hide, but knowing she was being watched made her feel uncomfortable. She wondered if Mr. sat in his office somewhere, watching the staff move through his house like pieces on a chess board. Mrs. led her back to the kitchen and handed her a key card. This will give you access to the areas where you are authorized to work. If you try to use it somewhere else, security will be immediately. Maya clipped the card to her uniform, feeling the weight of responsibility that came with it. This job could change her life. The salary would allow her to move her daughter to a better school district and maybe even save money for college. But she was beginning to understand that earning that money might not be as simple as she had hoped. You may begin with the library today, Mrs. said. Dust all surfaces, vacuum the rugs, and organize any books that appear to be out of place. Mr. is very particular about organization. Maya nodded and gathered her supplies. As she wheeled the cleaning cart toward the library, she caught a glimpse of movement upstairs. Through the railing, she could see a tall figure in dark clothing walking quickly down a hallway. It had to be Alexander, though she could not make out any details from this distance. The library was even more impressive up close. Maya had never seen so many books in a private home. She started dusting the lower shelves, being careful not to disturb the arrangement. Many of the books were in languages she did not recognize, and others dealt with subjects like quantum physics and advanced mathematics that were far beyond her understanding. As she worked, Maya found herself relaxing slightly. The library felt peaceful, almost sacred. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, and the silence was broken only by the soft sound of her cloth against the wooden shelves. For a moment, she could almost forget about the cameras and the strict rules, and simply enjoy being surrounded by so much knowledge. She was halfway through dusting the second bookcase when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate steps that suggested someone tall and confident. Maya continued working, remembering Mrs.'s instruction not to speak unless spoken to. The footsteps stopped at the library entrance. Maya could feel someone watching her, but she kept her eyes focused on her work. Her heart rate increased slightly, knowing this was probably her first encounter with her mysterious employer. "You must be the new housekeeper," a deep voice said behind her. Maya turned slowly, prepared to meet the face she had seen on magazine covers and television interviews. Alexander stood in the doorway, and she was surprised by how different he looked in person. He was taller than she had expected, probably 6'2", with dark hair that looked like he had been running his hands through it. His face was more angular than it appeared in photographs, and his eyes were an unusual shade of gray that seemed to see everything at once. But what caught Maya's attention immediately was his clothing. He wore an expensive white dress shirt that was wrinkled and partially untucked. The sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. And there, just below the left shoulder, was a dark stain that made Maya's breath catch in her throat. It was blood, fresh blood that had soaked through the fabric and was still slightly damp. "Yes, sir," Maya managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Maya Washington." Alexander stepped into the library, and Maya could see more details that made her increasingly uncomfortable. His pants also had dark stains on them, and there was dirt under his fingernails. His usually perfectly styled hair was disheveled, and there was a scratch on his left cheek that looked recent. "Mrs. explained the rules to you, I assume?" he asked, walking closer to where Maya stood frozen by the bookshelf. "Yes, sir," Maya replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She wanted to look away from the bloodstains, but they seemed to draw her eyes like magnets. Her mind raced with questions she knew she could never ask. Where had he been? Whose blood was that? Why did he look like he had been in some kind of struggle? "Good," Alexander said, his gray eyes studying Maya's face carefully. "I trust you understand how important discretion is in a position like this." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The way he emphasized the word discretion made it sound more like a threat than a job requirement. She could feel sweat forming on her palms as she gripped the dusting cloth. Alexander moved to one of the leather chairs and sat down heavily, as if he was exhausted. Up close, Maya could see that the bloodstains were not the only concerning thing about his appearance. His shirt was torn slightly near the collar, and there was what looked like dirt or mud on his shoes. "I had to take care of some business this morning," he said, almost as if he was talking to himself rather than to Maya. "Sometimes business requires getting your hands dirty." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. The way he said it made her think he was not talking about financial transactions or board meetings. She tried to focus on her dusting, but her hands were shaking slightly, and she was afraid he would notice. "You have a daughter, don't you?" Alexander asked suddenly. The question caught Maya completely off guard. How did he know about her daughter? She had not mentioned Jasmine to anyone at the employment agency, and certainly not to Mrs. "Yes, sir," Maya said quietly, wondering if this was some kind of test or threat. 16 years old, attends high school," Alexander continued, and Maya felt her blood turn to ice. "Smart girl, good grades, plans to study medicine in college." Maya's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. How did he know so much about her personal life? And why was he telling her this while sitting there covered in blood? "It would be a shame if anything happened to interfere with her plans," Alexander said, his voice casual but his eyes fixed on Maya's face. "College is expensive these days. A family can lose everything so quickly." Maya understood the message perfectly. This was not a casual conversation about her daughter's future. This was a warning, a reminder that Alexander had the power to destroy her family if she did not follow his rules. "I understand, sir," Maya said, her voice barely audible. Alexander stood up and walked toward the library entrance. As he passed Maya, she caught a smell that made her stomach turn. It was not just the metallic smell of blood. There was something else, something earthy and unpleasant, like he had been digging in dirt or handling something dead. "Excellent," he said, pausing in the doorway. "I think we understand each other perfectly." After he left, Maya stood alone in the library, her legs shaking so badly she had to grip the bookshelf for support. She stared at the chair where he had been sitting and saw small, dark spots on the leather that had not been there before. More blood. Maya looked around the beautiful library, with its thousands of books and expensive furniture, and realized she was trapped in a nightmare disguised as a dream job. Whatever Alexander had been doing that morning, it had involved violence and blood, and now she was a witness to something she was never supposed to see. She thought about her daughter, about the college applications they had been working on together, about the dreams they had built for a better future. All of it now seemed to hang by a thread controlled by a man who clearly had no limits to what he would do to protect his secrets. Maya picked up her dusting cloth with trembling hands and continued working, knowing that she had no choice but to pretend she had seen nothing, heard nothing, and suspected nothing. But deep in her mind, she began to wonder what other secrets this mansion held, and whether she would live long enough to keep them. Maya barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dark stains on Alexander's shirt and heard his casual threats about her daughter. She lay in her small bedroom, staring at the ceiling and wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life by taking this job. At 5:30 in the morning, her alarm buzzed softly. Maya had been awake for hours, but she forced herself to get up and get ready for her second day at the mansion. She made coffee with shaking hands and tried to eat a piece of toast, but her stomach was too twisted with anxiety to hold food. Jasmine wandered into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. At 16, she was beautiful and smart, with dreams of becoming a doctor and helping people. Maya looked at her daughter and felt a fierce protective instinct surge through her chest. "You're up early again, Mom," Jasmine said, pouring herself a glass of orange juice. "This new job must be pretty demanding." "It's fine, baby," Maya lied, forcing a smile. "Just want to make a good impression." Jasmine studied her mother's face with the perceptive eyes of a teenager who had learned to read adults carefully. "You look worried. Is everything okay?" Maya wanted desperately to tell her daughter the truth, to explain that they might be in danger because Maya had seen something she should not have seen. But she also knew that knowledge would only put Jasmine in more danger. "Everything's fine," Maya repeated, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Just nervous about the new job, you know how I get." Jasmine smiled and hugged her mother. "You're the best housekeeper in the city, Mom. They're lucky to have you." As Maya drove through the early morning darkness toward the mansion, she thought about her daughter's words. Maybe she was overthinking things. Maybe Alexander had a perfectly innocent explanation for the blood on his clothes. Maybe she had misinterpreted his comments about Jasmine. But deep in her gut, Maya knew she was lying to herself. She had seen enough violence in her life to recognize the signs. Growing up in a rough neighborhood, working in houses where domestic abuse happened behind closed doors, she had learned to trust her instincts about danger. The mansion looked different in the early morning light, still impressive, but somehow more ominous. Maya used her key card to enter through the service entrance and found Mrs. waiting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and a stern expression. "Mister had some specific instructions for you today," Mrs. said without any greeting. "You are to clean his private office on the second floor." Maya felt her heart skip a beat. Yesterday, Mrs. had specifically said she would never need to enter his private office. Now, less than 24 hours later, the rules had changed. "His office?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes," Mrs. replied, her tone suggesting this was not open for discussion. "He worked late last night and said the room needs attention. You will find it at the end of the west wing on the second floor." Mrs. handed Maya a different key card, this one silver instead of the standard blue. "This will give you access. Be very careful in there. Mister's work is highly sensitive and confidential." Maya took the key card, noticing that Mrs. hands were trembling slightly. The older woman's usually perfect composure seemed shaken, and there were dark circles under her eyes as if she had not slept well either. "Mrs." Maya said carefully, "is everything all right?" The house manager's eyes flicked toward the security camera in the corner of the kitchen, then back to Maya. "Everything is fine," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Just remember what we discussed yesterday about discretion." Maya nodded and gathered her cleaning supplies. As she made her way through the mansion toward the west wing, she noticed other changes from the day before. There was a faint chemical smell in the air, like bleach or industrial cleaner. Some of the artwork in the hallways had been moved or removed entirely, and there was a section of hardwood floor near the main staircase that looked like it had been recently refinished. The west wing was quieter than the rest of the house, with thick carpeting that muffled Maya's footsteps. She found the office door at the end of a long hallway, marked only with a small brass nameplate that read, "A Private." Maya swiped the silver key card and heard the electronic lock click open. She pushed the door and stepped inside, then immediately wished she had not. The office was in complete disarray. Papers were scattered across the floor, and there were several broken picture frames lying near the large mahogany desk. One of the windows had a spider web crack in the corner, as if something had struck it hard. But what made Maya's blood run cold were the dark stains on the white marble floor. More blood, much more than what she had seen on shirt the day before. Maya stood frozen in the doorway, her cleaning supplies forgotten. The stains formed an irregular pattern across the floor, some drops and some larger patches where blood had pooled. There was also what looked like scuff marks, as if someone had been dragged across the marble. Her first instinct was to run, to drop the key card and walk out of the mansion and never come back. But then she thought about her daughter, about the threats had made, about the way Mrs. had looked frightened this morning. Maya forced herself to step into the office and close the door behind her. Whatever had happened here, she was now a witness to it. And if she wanted to protect her daughter, she needed to understand what kind of man she was working for. She moved carefully around the bloodstains, examining the room more closely. Behind the desk, she found more evidence of violence. There were drops of blood on the leather chair, and what looked like fragments of broken glass from a shattered picture frame. The picture itself was gone, leaving only the empty frame lying among the debris. Maya opened her cleaning supplies and began working methodically. She started with the broken glass, carefully collecting every piece and placing them in a bag. As she worked, she tried to piece together what might have happened in this room. The pattern of bloodstains suggested a struggle. Someone had been hurt badly, possibly struck or beaten. The scuff marks on the floor indicated that either a body or something heavy had been dragged from one side of the room to the other, and the amount of blood suggested serious injuries, possibly life-threatening ones. As Maya cleaned the marble floor with bleach and hot water, she found herself wondering about the timing. Had said he had business to take care of yesterday morning, which was when she had seen him covered in blood. But the blood in his office looked fresh, as if whatever had happened here occurred much more recently. While scrubbing the floor, Maya noticed something glinting under the desk. She reached carefully and pulled out a small gold earring in the shape of a butterfly. It was delicate and expensive-looking, clearly belonging to a woman. Maya held it up to the light, wondering who it belonged to and what had happened to its owner. The earring was too small and feminine to belong to, and Maya had not seen any women working in the mansion besides herself and Mrs. This suggested that someone else had been in this office recently, someone who had been involved in whatever violence had occurred here. Maya slipped the earring into her pocket, not sure why she was taking it, but feeling it might be important evidence of something. She continued cleaning, removing every trace of blood and violence from the office until it looked like nothing had ever happened there. As she worked, Maya became aware of voices coming from somewhere else in the house. She could not make out the words, but the tone sounded urgent and concerned. At one point, she heard what sounded like Alexander's voice raised in anger, followed by the sound of a door slamming. When Maya finished cleaning the office, it looked perfect again. The marble floor gleamed, the broken glass was gone, and fresh flowers had been placed on the desk to cover any remaining odors. But Maya knew that no amount of cleaning could erase what had really happened in this room. She gathered her supplies and locked the office door behind her. As she walked back through the west wing, she noticed Mrs. standing at the far end of the hallway, talking quietly on her cell phone. The conversation looked intense and secretive, and Mrs. kept glancing around nervously as if afraid of being overheard. Maya tried to move quietly past her, but Mrs. suddenly ended her call and turned around. "How did it go in the office?" Mrs. asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "Fine," Maya replied. "Everything is clean now." Mrs. studied Maya's face carefully, as if searching for signs that she had seen too much or understood too much. "Mister will be pleased," she said finally. "He values thoroughness." As Maya continued through the mansion, she began to notice other staff members she had not seen before. There was a man in an expensive suit who looked more like a lawyer than household help. There was another man with cold eyes who carried himself like security or a bodyguard. And there was a woman in medical scrubs who was carrying a small black bag. All of these people moved through the house with urgent purpose, as if they were dealing with some kind of crisis. They barely acknowledged Maya's presence, but she could feel their tension and stress filling the air like a toxic cloud. Maya spent the rest of the morning cleaning the guest bedrooms, but her mind kept returning to the office and the bloodstains she had scrubbed away. She thought about the butterfly earring in her pocket and wondered if she should tell someone about it. But who could she tell? The police? What evidence did she have besides some blood that was now gone and an earring that could have come from anywhere? During her lunch break, Maya sat in the small staff room and tried to eat a sandwich, but her appetite was gone. She pulled out her phone and started to research Alexander, looking for any news stories or information that might explain what she had witnessed. Most of the articles were typical business coverage about industries and their technological innovations. There were profiles of as a brilliant entrepreneur and philanthropist, but as Maya dug deeper, she found a few stories that painted a different picture. There was an article from 6 months ago about a former industries employee who had died in what was ruled a suicide, but the man's family insisted he had been murdered. There was another story about a journalist who had been investigating business practices and had suddenly stopped her research and moved to another country. Most disturbing was a brief mention of a woman named Sarah who had been personal assistant 2 years ago. According to the article, Sarah had disappeared one day without explanation, leaving behind her apartment, her car, and all her belongings. The police investigation had been closed quickly with no leads found. Maya stared at her phone screen, feeling pieces of a horrible puzzle beginning to come together. The butterfly earring in her pocket suddenly felt much heavier, and she wondered if it might have belonged to Sarah or another woman who had crossed Alexander. As Maya finished her lunch, she heard footsteps approaching the staff room. She quickly closed her phone and tried to look casual, but her heart was racing with fear and adrenaline. Alexander appeared in the doorway, and Maya immediately noticed that he looked completely different from the day before. His clothes were immaculate, his hair was perfectly styled, and there was no trace of the violence and blood she had witnessed. He looked exactly like the polished billionaire from magazine covers. "Maya," he said, his voice friendly and warm, "I wanted to thank you personally for your excellent work in my office this morning." Maya forced herself to meet his eyes. "You're welcome, sir." "Mrs. tells me you were very thorough," continued, stepping into the small room and making it feel much smaller and more threatening. "I appreciate employees who pay attention to detail and who understand the importance of cleanliness." The way he said the word cleanliness made Maya's skin crawl. She understood that he was not just talking about dust and dirt. He was talking about evidence and witnesses and the kind of cleaning that made problems disappear permanently. "I always try to do my best work, sir," Maya said quietly. Smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I'm sure you do. Tell me, how is your daughter? Jasmine, isn't it?" Maya felt ice water flood her veins. The casual way he mentioned her daughter's name while they were discussing the cleanup of a crime scene made his threat crystal clear. "She's fine, sir," Maya managed to say. "Good," replied. "I would hate for anything to disrupt her education. High school is such an important time for a young person's future." Walked closer to Maya, and she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with something else, something chemical like the cleaning products she had used to scrub away the bloodstains. "I think you and I have an understanding, Maya," he said softly. "You're intelligent enough to recognize the value of discretion, and I'm generous enough to reward loyalty appropriately." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She felt like a mouse trapped in a corner by a very dangerous cat. "Excellent," said, backing away toward the door. "I look forward to a long and mutually beneficial working relationship." After he left, Maya sat alone in the staff room for several minutes, trying to control her breathing and stop her hands from shaking. She understood now that she was not just a witness to Alexander's crimes. She was an accomplice, forced to help cover them up through her silence and her cleaning skills. Maya thought about the butterfly earring hidden in her pocket and made a decision that would change everything. She could not go to the police without more evidence, but she could not continue working in this house without trying to uncover the truth. Whatever had happened to the women who had worked for Alexander before, Maya was determined not to become another victim. But she also knew that one wrong move, one moment of carelessness, could end her life and destroy her daughter's future. As Maya returned to her cleaning duties, she began to form a plan. She would continue working, continue cleaning up messes, and continue pretending to be the obedient employee he wanted. But she would also be watching, listening, and gathering evidence. 2 weeks had passed since Maya first saw the blood on Alexander's shirt, and she had developed a routine of careful observation while maintaining the appearance of an obedient employee. Every morning, she arrived at the mansion with cleaning supplies and a small digital camera hidden in her uniform pocket. Every evening, she left with new pieces of a terrifying puzzle. Maya had learned to move through the house like a ghost, invisible but always watching. She memorized the security camera locations and found the blind spots where she could work unobserved. She learned the schedules of the other staff members and identified which ones might be allies and which ones were clearly part of his inner circle of accomplices. Mrs. remained nervous and jumpy, often ending phone conversations abruptly when Maya approached. The man in the expensive suit, whom Maya had learned was personal lawyer named David, visited the house almost daily now. The cold-eyed security man, introduced only as Mr. Brooks, had taken to following Maya at a distance, never speaking but always watching. Most disturbing was the woman in medical scrubs, Doctor, who had become a regular presence in the mansion. Maya had overheard enough conversations to understand that Doctor was not providing routine health care. She was there to handle complications and cleanup that required medical expertise. The butterfly earring Maya had found in his office remained hidden in her jewelry box at home, wrapped in tissue paper like a dangerous secret. She had researched Sarah more thoroughly and found an old social media profile that showed the missing woman wearing identical earrings. The connection was no coincidence. Maya had also discovered that she was not the first housekeeper to disappear under mysterious circumstances. Through careful questioning of neighbors and local employment agencies, she learned about 3 other women who had worked for over the past 5 years. All had left their positions suddenly. All had moved away without notice or forwarding addresses, and all had been single mothers with teenage children. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Specifically targeted women who were vulnerable, women with children who could be threatened, women who had few resources and even fewer people who would notice if they disappeared. On this particular Thursday morning, Maya arrived at the mansion to find unusual activity in the main driveway. There were two black SUVs parked near the front entrance, and several men in dark suits were carrying what looked like heavy equipment into the house. Maya recognized the signs of a cleanup operation in progress. She entered through the service entrance as usual, but Mrs. was nowhere to be found. Instead, Doctor was waiting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and a grim expression. "Maya," the doctor said, her accent revealing her Spanish origins. "There has been a change in your schedule today. You will be working in the basement level." Maya felt her blood run cold. In 2 weeks of working at the mansion, she had never been asked to clean the basement. She had not even known there was a basement until this moment. "The basement?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Yes," Doctor replied, studying Maya's face carefully. "Mister has some storage areas down there that require attention. Mrs. will provide you with the access codes." Doctor handed Maya a different key card, this one black with silver trim. Maya noticed that the doctor's hands were stained with something dark around the fingernails, and there was a small spot of blood on her medical scrubs. "Doctor," Maya said carefully, "is everything all right? You look like you've had a difficult night." Doctor's eyes hardened, and Maya immediately regretted asking the question. "I had to handle some medical issues," the doctor replied. "Sometimes Mister's business associates require immediate care." Maya nodded and took the key card, understanding that she had just been given another piece of the puzzle. Business associates were getting hurt badly enough to require emergency medical attention, and Doctor was providing that care off the books and away from hospitals where questions might be asked. As Maya gathered her cleaning supplies, she noticed that Doctor was preparing a large medical kit with supplies that looked more like surgical instruments than basic first aid. There were syringes, bottles of clear liquid, and what appeared to be several bags of blood for transfusions. "Maya," Doctor said as she packed her kit, "you should know that Mister values loyalty above all else. Employees who demonstrate true loyalty are rewarded generously. Those who betray his trust, well, they often require my medical services." The threat was clear and direct. Maya forced herself to smile and nod as if she understood and accepted the arrangement. But inside, she was calculating distances to exits and wondering if she could make it to her car before security team could stop her. "I understand completely," Maya said. "Mister has been very clear about his expectations." Doctor seemed satisfied with this response and left the kitchen with her medical kit. Maya waited several minutes to make sure the doctor was gone, then made her way toward the basement access stairs she had noticed near the west wing. The basement level was accessed through a heavy steel door that required both the black key card and a 6-digit code that Mrs. had written on a slip of paper. As Maya descended the stairs, she was struck by how different this part of the house felt from the elegant main floors. The basement was cold and sterile, with concrete walls painted institutional white and fluorescent lighting that cast harsh shadows. The air smelled like disinfectant mixed with something else, something organic and unpleasant that Maya could not identify. The first room Maya entered appeared to be a storage area filled with cleaning supplies and household equipment. But as she looked more closely, she realized that many of the cleaning products were industrial-strength chemicals normally used in hospitals or crime scene cleanup. There were bottles of bleach, enzyme cleaners for removing biological material, and solvents strong enough to dissolve organic matter. Maya continued deeper into the basement, following a long hallway lined with several doors. Most were locked, but a few stood open, revealing rooms that made Maya's stomach turn with horror and disgust. One room contained what appeared to be a medical examination table with restraining straps and surgical lights. The floor around the table was stained with dark spots that had been partially cleaned, but not completely removed. There were drains in the floor and a large industrial sink that looked like it had been used for washing more than dishes. Another room was set up like a small prison cell, with bare walls, a single cot, and a bucket in the corner. The walls were covered with scratch marks, as if someone had tried desperately to claw their way out. There were also darker stains on the walls that Maya did not want to think about too closely. The most disturbing room was at the end of the hallway. It contained a large industrial freezer, several plastic containers that looked like body bags, and a collection of personal belongings that had clearly been taken from multiple victims. Maya saw purses, jewelry, cell phones, and clothing that belonged to different women. Among the personal items, Maya recognized a wallet that belonged to Sarah. The photo on the driver's license matched the pictures Maya had found online. Next to Sarah's wallet was a small jewelry box containing the matching butterfly earring to the one Maya had hidden at home. Maya realized she was standing in Alexander's trophy room, where he kept mementos of his victims like a serial killer collecting souvenirs. The scope of his crimes was much larger than she had imagined. This was not just a businessman who occasionally got violent with associates. This was a predator who had been hunting and killing women for years. As Maya stood frozen among the evidence of murders, she heard footsteps on the stairs leading down to the basement. Heavy footsteps that could only belong to one person. Alexander was coming down to check on her progress. Maya quickly moved away from the trophy room and grabbed her cleaning supplies, pretending to be working in the storage area when appeared at the bottom of the stairs. "How are you finding the basement, Maya?" asked, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "I hope the working conditions are acceptable." "Yes, sir," Maya replied, not trusting herself to say more. "Everything is fine." Walked closer, and Maya could see that he was wearing clothes similar to what she had seen that first day. His shirt was wrinkled, his pants were stained, and there was dirt under his fingernails. Fresh blood speckled his sleeve. "I had to handle some business again this morning," said casually, as if discussing the weather. "Sometimes people make poor choices about their loyalty, and I have to correct those mistakes." Maya understood that someone else had died today, probably someone who had discovered too much about activities or had threatened to expose him. She wondered if it had been another employee, another journalist, or perhaps a business partner who had outlived their usefulness. "Doctor tells me you had an interesting conversation this morning," continued, studying Maya's face carefully. "She mentioned that you asked about her work." Maya felt her heart racing, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I was just concerned about her welfare, sir." She looked tired. Smiled, but his gray eyes remained cold and calculating. "That's very thoughtful of you, Maya, but you should remember that curiosity can be dangerous in a workplace like this." Moved closer to Maya, backing her against the concrete wall. She could smell the blood on his clothes and see the dark stains that covered his hands. "Tell me, Maya," said softly, "have you found anything interesting during your cleaning today?" Maya realized this was a test. Wanted to know if she had discovered the trophy room, if she had seen the evidence of his murders, if she understood the full scope of what she was involved in. "Just normal storage items, sir," Maya lied. "Cleaning supplies and equipment." Stared at her for several long seconds, as if trying to read her thoughts. Maya forced herself to meet his gaze and maintain an expression of innocent ignorance. "Good," said finally, stepping back. "I would hate to think that my trust in you was misplaced." Walked toward the hallway that led to the other basement rooms, and Maya held her breath, wondering if he was going to check the trophy room and discover that someone had been inside. But instead, he stopped at one of the locked doors and used his own key card to open it. Maya called over his shoulder, "I need you to clean this room very thoroughly. There was an accident this morning, and I need all traces of it removed." Maya approached the door with her cleaning supplies, not wanting to see what lay beyond, but knowing she had no choice. The room contained another examination table, but this one was covered with fresh blood and what appeared to be pieces of torn clothing. On the floor next to the table was a pile of personal belongings that included a woman's purse, a cell phone, and a pair of shoes. Maya could see car keys and a driver's license that belonged to someone named Martinez. "Ms. Martinez made some unfortunate choices about her employment with my company," explained matter-of-factly. "She thought she could steal from me and then threatened to expose my business operations if I tried to stop her." Maya realized she was looking at the scene of Martinez's murder, probably committed within the past few hours. The blood was still wet, and the smell of death filled the air. "I need this room cleaned completely," continued. "And Ms. Martinez's belongings will need to be disposed of properly. Doctor has already handled the biological aspects of the situation." Maya understood that Doctor had not just provided medical care. She had helped dispose of Martinez's body, probably in the industrial freezer Maya had seen in the trophy room. "Yes, sir," Maya said quietly, knowing she had no choice but to comply. "I'll take care of everything." Smiled and patted Maya's shoulder in a gesture that was supposed to be friendly but felt like a threat. I knew I could count on you, Maya. You understand the value of discretion and loyalty. As left the basement, Maya stood alone in the room where Martinez had died, surrounded by the tools she would use to erase all evidence of the crime. She thought about her daughter, about the threats had made, about the women who had disappeared before her. Maya realized she was at a crossroads. She could continue cleaning up crimes, becoming more deeply involved with each murder she helped cover up. Eventually, she would know too much and would add her to his collection of trophies. Or she could take the evidence she had gathered and try to expose him, knowing that doing so would put both her and Jasmine in immediate danger. As Maya began cleaning Martinez's blood from the examination table, she made a decision that would determine whether she lived or died. She would gather as much evidence as possible, document everything she could, and find a way to bring Alexander to justice. Maya had been planning her escape for 3 days, but Alexander was always one step ahead. Every time she thought she had found an opportunity to gather evidence or contact the outside world, something went wrong. Security cameras appeared in areas that had been blind spots. Her phone mysteriously lost signal when she tried to make calls, and Mr. Brooks, security chief, seemed to anticipate her movements before she even made them. On Monday morning, Maya arrived at the mansion to find the atmosphere even more tense than usual. Mrs. was pale and shaking, barely able to meet Maya's eyes when she handed over the daily cleaning schedule. Doctor was already there with her medical kit, preparing for what looked like another emergency surgery, and himself was packing through the main floor like a caged animal, his expensive suit rumpled and his face dark with anger. "There's been a complication," Mrs. whispered to Maya as they stood in the kitchen. "Someone has been asking questions about Mr.'s business operations." Maya felt her heart skip a beat. Had someone discovered her amateur investigation? Had she left some trace of evidence that pointed back to her? "What kind of questions?" Maya asked carefully. Mrs. glanced around nervously before answering. "A private investigator hired by Martinez's family. They think she didn't just disappear. They think something happened to her." Maya remembered cleaning's blood from the examination table in the basement. The family was right to be suspicious, but they had no idea how close they were to the truth or how much danger their investigation was putting them in. "Mr. is handling the situation," Mrs. continued, "but he wants all staff to be extra careful about security protocols today." Maya nodded and took her cleaning supplies, but her mind was racing with new possibilities. If a private investigator was already looking into his activities, maybe she could find a way to contact them. Maybe she would not have to face this monster alone. As Maya worked through the morning, she kept her ears open for any conversations that might give her more information about the investigator. She learned that his name was Thomas, that he had been asking questions at industries and other businesses connected to his empire, and that was extremely worried about what might uncover. Around noon, Maya overheard a phone conversation between and his lawyer, David, that made her blood run cold. "I don't care what it costs," was saying, his voice sharp with anger. "Needs to be stopped before he finds anything concrete. Use the same solution we used for that journalist last year." Maya understood exactly what meant by solution. Thomas was going to be murdered, just like Martinez and Sarah and all the others who had gotten too close to the truth. Maya realized she was running out of time. If was killed, the investigation would die with him and would be even more careful about covering his tracks. She had to act now, before another innocent person died, and before decided that she knew too much to be allowed to live. During her lunch break, Maya made a desperate decision. She used the staff computer in the break room to search for information about Thomas and his investigation. She found his office address and phone number, and she composed an email that could either save both their lives or get them both killed. "Mr.," she typed, "I work for Alexander and I have information about Martinez and other missing women, is planning to kill you. Meet me tonight at the Riverside Park playground at 11 p.m. Come alone and bring police backup. Lives depend on this. A friend." Maya sent the email and immediately deleted it from the computer's history. Hopping's security systems had not been monitoring the staff internet access. She spent the rest of the day in a state of nervous energy, jumping at every sound and watching for signs that her message had been discovered. That evening, Maya told Jasmine she was going out to meet an old friend from work. She hated lying to her daughter, but she could not risk telling her the truth. If something went wrong tonight, at least Jasmine would have no knowledge of Maya's actions. "Be careful, Mom," Jasmine said, giving her a hug. "You've seemed really stressed lately." Maya held her daughter tight, knowing this might be the last time she would see her alive. "I love you, baby," she whispered. "Remember that no matter what happens." Riverside Park was dark and mostly empty when Maya arrived at 10:30. She had chosen this location because it was public but secluded, with multiple exits and good visibility of anyone approaching. She sat on a bench near the playground and waited, her heart pounding with fear and adrenaline. At exactly 11 o'clock, a man approached from the parking area. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and a weathered face that spoke of years of difficult investigations. He moved cautiously, constantly checking over his shoulder for signs of being followed. "Are you the one who sent me the email?" he asked quietly as he sat down on the opposite end of the bench. "Yes," Maya replied. "Thomas." "That's me, and you work for Alexander." Maya nodded. "I'm his housekeeper. I've seen things, terrible things." Leaned forward, his attention focused completely on Maya's words. "Tell me everything." Maya began with that first day when she had seen blood on shirt. She described the office she had cleaned, the basement rooms filled with evidence of murder, the trophy collection of personal belongings from victims. She told him about Martinez, Sarah, and the other women who had disappeared. As Maya spoke, took notes on a small recorder, occasionally asking for clarification or additional details. His expression grew darker with each revelation, and Maya could see anger building in his eyes. "Do you have any physical evidence?" asked when Maya finished her account. Maya pulled out the butterfly earring she had taken from Sophus. "This belonged to Sarah. Keeps souvenirs from his victims in a room in the basement." Examined the earring carefully, then placed it in a small evidence bag. "This is good, but we need more. Can you get photographs of the basement rooms?" "I've been trying," Maya said, "but security is too tight. There are cameras everywhere, and his security chief follows me constantly." Was quiet for several minutes, thinking through the options. Finally, he looked at Maya with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Martinez was my niece. Her family hired me because the police investigation was a joke. They ruled her a runaway after 2 days, even though she had never missed a day of work in her life." Maya felt the emotional weight of personal connection to the case. This was not just a professional investigation for him. It was a quest for justice for his murdered family member. "I've been investigating for 3 months," continued. "I know about the other missing women, the suspicious deaths of his business associates, the way witnesses and potential threats tend to disappear. But I've never had anyone on the inside before." Paused and looked directly at Maya. "What you're doing is incredibly dangerous, has killed people for knowing much less than what you've seen." "I know," Maya said quietly, "but I can't just stand by and watch him keep murdering people, and I can't wait for him to decide that I know too much." Nodded approvingly. "Then we need to work together to gather enough evidence to bring him down, but we have to be smart about it." They spent the next hour planning a careful strategy. Would provide Maya with a small hidden camera that she could use to photograph the basement rooms when the opportunity arose. He would also give her a secure phone number where she could send the images immediately. "Most importantly," said, "you need to start planning your exit strategy. As soon as we have enough evidence to move forward, you and your daughter need to disappear. We'll know the information came from inside his organization, and he'll start eliminating suspects." Maya understood that she was signing a death warrant for herself, and possibly for Jasmine. But she also knew that doing nothing was just a slower form of the same death sentence. "There's one more thing," said as they prepared to leave. "Knows about our meeting." Maya felt ice water flood her veins. "What do you mean?" "I've been followed for the past week. People know I'm investigating him, and they've probably been tracking my movements. There's a good chance they saw us together tonight." Maya realized that her desperate gamble had probably failed. Instead of finding help, she had exposed herself and put both of them in immediate danger. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We accelerate the timeline," said grimly. "You need to get those photographs tomorrow, and then you need to run. I'll have a federal contact ready to move on as soon as we have the evidence." Gave Maya a small digital camera disguised as a cleaning supply bottle and a phone number written on a piece of paper. "Memorize this number and destroy the paper," he said. "Send the photos as soon as you take them." As they walked back to their cars, Maya noticed a black SUV parked across the street with its engine running. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside, but she knew instinctively that security team was watching them. "They're here," Maya whispered too. "I know," he replied calmly. "Just get in your car and drive home normally. Don't look back, don't speed, and don't do anything that suggests you know you're being watched." Maya got in her car with shaking hands and started the engine. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she could see the black SUV beginning to follow her. She drove home carefully, taking a route through well-lit areas with plenty of traffic, hoping that people would not try anything violent in public. When Maya reached her apartment building, the SUV drove past without stopping, but she knew they had seen where she lived. Now knew exactly how to find her and Jasmine if he decided they needed to be eliminated. Maya sat in her car for several minutes, trying to calm her nerves before going upstairs to face her daughter. She thought about the camera hidden in her purse and the mission she had to complete tomorrow. One way or another, her time as Alexander's housekeeper was about to end. But first, she had to survive long enough to expose his crimes and protect the other women who might become his victims in the future. Maya looked up at the window of her apartment, where she could see Jasmine doing homework at the kitchen table, and made a promise to herself. Whatever it cost, whatever risks she had to take, she would not let Alexander destroy any more families. Tomorrow, she would get the evidence that would bring him down, or she would die trying. Maya woke up at 4 in the morning with her heart already racing. She had barely slept, knowing that today would either end Alexander's reign of terror or result in her own death. She made coffee with trembling hands and checked her phone for any messages from Thomas. There were none, which she hoped was a good sign. Jasmine was still sleeping when Maya kissed her forehead and whispered a silent goodbye. She had written a letter explaining everything and hidden it in Jasmine's room, along with contact information and instructions to run if Maya did not come home that evening. The drive to the mansion felt like a journey to her own execution. Maya gripped the steering wheel tightly and tried to stay focused on the mission ahead. Hidden in her cleaning supplies was the camera had given her. She would have one chance to photograph the evidence in its basement, and then she would have to run for her life. When Maya arrived at the mansion, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. The usual security guards were not at their posts, and there were several unfamiliar cars in the driveway. Mrs. met her at the service entrance with an expression of barely controlled panic. "Maya," Mrs. said, her voice shaking, "Mr. wants to see you in his office immediately." Maya's blood turned to ice. If suspected her involvement with, she was walking into a trap. But she had no choice except to follow Mrs. through the mansion towards office. As they walked, Maya noticed signs of recent activity throughout the house. There were men in suits moving equipment, and she could smell the harsh chemical odor of industrial cleaning products. It looked like was preparing for a major cleanup operation. His office door was open, and Maya could see him standing behind his desk with his back to the entrance. He was no longer wearing his expensive business attire. Instead, he was dressed in dark clothing that looked more suitable for manual labor or violence. "Come in," Maya said without turning around. "Close the door behind you." Maya entered the office and closed the door, knowing she might have just sealed her own fate. Finally turned to face her, and she saw that his usual polished appearance had been replaced by something much more dangerous and predatory. "I had an interesting conversation last night," said, walking slowly around his desk toward Maya. "It seems that a private investigator named Thomas has been asking questions about my business operations." Maya forced herself to maintain eye contact, even though every instinct told her to run. "I don't know anything about that, sir." Smiled, but it was the cold expression of a predator playing with its prey. "Really? Because seems to know an awful lot about my private activities, details that only someone with inside access could provide." Moved closer to Maya, and she could see dark stains on his clothing that suggested he had already been busy that morning. "Mr. met with someone in Riverside Park last night, someone who had information about Martinez and other former employees of mine." Maya realized that the security team had not just followed her to the meeting. They had probably been watching and listening to everything she had discussed. Her desperate attempt to find help had instead given complete knowledge of their plans. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't understand what this has to do with me," Maya said, trying to maintain the pretense of innocence even though she knew it was probably useless. Reached into his desk drawer and pulled out something that made Maya's heart stop beating. It was the small digital camera that had given her, the one she thought was hidden safely in her cleaning supplies. "This is a very sophisticated piece of equipment," said, examining the camera. "The kind of thing a private investigator might give to someone on the inside to help them gather evidence." Maya understood that she had been completely outplayed. People had searched her belongings while she slept, probably entering her apartment in the middle of the night. They had found the camera, the letter she had written to Jasmine, and probably everything else that could connect her to. "Where is my daughter?" Maya asked, abandoning any pretense that she was innocent. Smile widened. "Jasmine is safe for the moment. She's being looked after by some of my associates while we have this conversation." Maya felt rage and terror surge through her in equal measure. Had not just threatened her daughter. He had actually kidnapped Jasmine to use as leverage against her. "You bastard," Maya whispered, her voice filled with all the fury she could no longer hide. "She's just a child." "She's insurance," replied calmly. "Insurance that you'll cooperate with the cleanup operation I have planned for today." Walked to the window and gestured toward the driveway where Maya could now see several more black SUVs arriving. "You see, Maya, your conversation with Mr. has created some complications for me. He knows too much, and he's already shared that information with federal law enforcement." Maya realized that was preparing for war. The men arriving at the mansion were not just security guards. They were a small army ready to eliminate anyone who posed a threat to operations. "But here's the thing about evidence," continued. "Evidence only matters if the people who possess it remain alive to present it. Mr. learned that lesson this morning." Maya felt her heart sink as she understood that Thomas was already dead. People had probably killed him shortly after the meeting in the park, eliminating the only person who knew about Maya's inside information. And evidence also becomes meaningless if it can be explained away by the testimony of credible witnesses, added, turning back to face Maya. "Which is where you come in." Walked to his desk and picked up a prepared statement typed on official letterhead. "This is your confession, Maya. It explains how you discovered that Mr. was planning to plant false evidence in my home to frame me for crimes I didn't commit." Maya read the document and realized how carefully he had planned this final move. The confession would portray her as a loyal employee who had uncovered scheme and helped expose it. Any evidence had gathered would be dismissed as fabricated material planted by a corrupt investigator. "The story will be that broke into my home last night with the intention of planting evidence," explained. "You discovered him in the basement and called security. Unfortunately, was armed and became violent when confronted. He was killed in self-defense." Maya understood the full scope of his plan. His body would be found in the basement along with planted evidence that would support the cover story. Maya's testimony would corroborate his version of events, and any investigation would conclude that it had been a rogue investigator who had died while attempting to frame an innocent businessman. "And what happens to me after I sign this confession?" Maya asked. "You'll be relocated somewhere safe with a new identity and a generous settlement for your cooperation," said. "Along with your daughter, of course." Maya knew that was lying. She and Jasmine would be killed as soon as their usefulness ended. But for the moment, she had to play along and look for any opportunity to escape or fight back. "I need to see my daughter first," Maya said. "I need to know she's safe before I sign anything." Nodded and pressed a button on his desk. A few minutes later, Mr. Brooks entered the office with Jasmine walking beside him. Maya's daughter looked frightened but unharmed, and Maya felt a surge of relief mixed with renewed determination to protect her. "Mom," Jasmine ran to Maya and hugged her tightly. "What's happening? These men came to our apartment and said you wanted them to bring me here." Maya held her daughter close, feeling the weight of responsibility for getting them both into this situation. "It's going to be okay, baby," she whispered, though she did not believe her own words. Watched the reunion with apparent amusement. "Very touching. Now, Maya, I think it's time to conclude our business arrangement." Handed Maya a pen and gestured toward the confession. "Sign the document, and we can all move forward with our lives." Maya looked at the paper, then at her daughter, then at its cold, gray eyes. She realized that signing the confession would not save either of them, would never let them live with the knowledge they possessed. But maybe there was another way to protect Jasmine. Before I sign, Maya said, I want to know what really happened to Martinez and the other women. Seemed surprised by the question. Why does that matter now? Because I need to understand who I'm really working for, Maya replied. I need to know the truth before I become part of covering it up. Studied Maya's face for a moment, then shrugged. Why not? You've earned the right to know. Walked to a filing cabinet and pulled out a folder filled with photographs and documents. Martinez discovered that I was using industries to launder money for some international business partners. She tried to blackmail me for a larger share of the profits. Spread the photographs on his desk, showing Maya images of Tide to the examination table in the basement. I explained to her that blackmail was not an acceptable business practice. When she refused to be reasonable, I had to terminate her employment permanently. Maya looked at the photographs and felt sick to her stomach. Had been tortured before she was killed, probably to make sure she had not shared her information with anyone else. Sarah made similar poor choices, continued, showing Maya more photographs. She thought she could steal from me and disappear. I had to correct that misunderstanding. Pulled out a final set of photographs that showed the basement trophy room Maya had discovered. I keep mementos of my problem employees as reminders of the importance of loyalty and discretion. Maya realized that was showing her these images not just to answer her question, but to terrorize her into complete submission. He wanted her to understand exactly what would happen if she tried to resist or escape. Now, said, putting away the photographs, I think you have enough information to make an informed decision about your future cooperation. Maya looked at the confession again, knowing that signing it would seal both her fate and Jasmine's. But as she picked up the pen, she noticed something that had overlooked in his arrogant confidence. The office window behind's desk was partially open, and Maya could see movement outside. Men in tactical gear were moving quietly through the grounds, surrounding the mansion. Had not just contacted Maya before he was killed. He had also contacted federal law enforcement. Maya realized that her perfect plan was about to fall apart. The FBI was already here, probably alerted by before his death. All Maya had to do was delay signing the confession long enough for the raid to begin. I have one more question, Maya said, stalling for time. How many women have you killed? Looked annoyed by the continued questions. Does it really matter? They all made choices that forced me to take action. It matters to me, Maya replied. I want to understand the full scope of what I'm becoming part of. As began to answer, Maya heard the faint sound of breaking glass from somewhere else in the mansion. The FBI was beginning their assault and had not yet realized what was happening. 17 women over the past 8 years, said proudly, plus various business associates and other individuals who became problems. Maya gripped the pen, knowing that had just confessed to multiple murders within hearing of the recording device she hoped the FBI was using to monitor the situation. Suddenly, the office door exploded inward as federal agents burst into the room with weapons drawn. Spun toward the window, realizing too late that he had been surrounded. FBI, everyone on the ground, shouted the lead agent. Maya grabbed Jasmine and pulled her behind's desk as chaos erupted around them. Reached for a gun hidden in his desk drawer, but Mr. Brooks was already moving to protect his employer. Gunfire erupted as security team engaged the federal agents throughout the mansion. Maya held her daughter close, shielding her from the violence while trying to stay out of the line of fire. Managed to grab his weapon and was pointing it toward Maya and Jasmine when the lead FBI agent put 3 bullets in his chest. Alexander, billionaire and serial killer, collapsed behind his desk in a spreading pool of his own blood. As the gunfire stopped and the FBI agents secured the mansion, Maya held her daughter and wept with relief. The nightmare was finally over. Alexander would never hurt another woman, never terrorize another family, never again use his wealth and power to cover up his crimes. In the months that followed, Maya's testimony helped federal prosecutors build cases against accomplices, including Mr. Brooks, and several corrupt officials who had helped cover up activities. The basement of mansion yielded enough evidence to solve 17 missing persons cases and bring closure to grieving families across the country. Maya and Jasmine entered the Federal Witness Protection Program with new identities and a chance to start their lives over in a safe location. Maya found work as a teacher, using her experiences to help other women recognize and escape from dangerous situations. Sometimes, late at night, Maya would wake up thinking she could smell the chemical odor of industrial bleach or hear Alexander's cold voice making threats against her daughter. But then she would remember that was dead, that his network of accomplices had been destroyed, and that the women he had murdered had finally received justice. Maya Washington had started as a housekeeper looking for a better life for her daughter. She had ended as the key witness who brought down one of the most dangerous serial killers in American history. It had cost her everything she had known, but it had given her something more valuable, the knowledge that she had saved countless future victims and proven that even the most powerful predators could be stopped by someone brave enough to fight back. The blood on Alexander's shirt that had started Maya's nightmare had ultimately led to his downfall. And Maya had learned that sometimes the only way to clean up a mess is to expose it to the light, no matter how dangerous that might be. Maya took a deep breath, grabbed her purse with the hidden camera, and went upstairs to spend what might be her last night with her daughter. The final phase of her war against Alexander was about to begin. But first, she had to survive long enough to get that evidence to someone who could act on it. And with security team watching her every move, that was going to be the most dangerous challenge of her life. Because Maya Washington had learned something important during her 42 years of life. Sometimes the only way to survive a predator is to become a hunter yourself.